Welcome back for week 5. This week we're going to be working on top of the block that we worked on week 1. So weeks 1 and 2 was this larger square. Weeks 3 and 4 we worked on this next square beside it. So for week 5 we're coming back on top of where we started for week 1. So we're going to be starting with a large block, block number 17. So this week is actually going to be over top of week 1 plus part of week 2's block. So we're starting with our larger block this time. So to find our starting stitch, we're going to start from the far side. We won't count the border edge, but counting each of these vertical loops across, we want to count to 48. When you get to this part here where week 2 is joined to week 1, we will skip over the border stitches, so we don't count that as a stitch, and we'll mark the 48th stitch. That will be our new border stitch, and I'll help you with that. We'll connect on the back of that one, picking up 47 loops across, and then picking up our far border loop for a total of 49 stitches on our hook, or loops on our hook. So we'll be working at this larger block, this azure or lace pattern, to start off week 5. There's a couple of new symbols this week. We're going to be learning a 2 together, chain 1. Sometimes the 2 together comes first and then the chain 1. Sometimes the chain 1 comes first and 2 together. So I'll help you with those. And then this is putting our hook underneath both of those 2 together strands to pick up their next loop. So a couple of new symbols, and I'll help you with those as we find them in the chart. So we have our border or adjoining loop here. We want to pick up 13 stitches across the top of this top block here. And then we're skipping over this border or this joining. So across the vertical line, we will pick up 4 more loops. I missed that first one. So this is why we want to count. So 1, 2, 3, 4 loops from the vertical line. And then it should be 30 loops that we pick up across the top of block 4. So you should have 47 loops on your hook. Our joining loop, pick up 13 across the top of this block. We'll pick up 4 more across the vertical line, and then 30 across the top of this block. So we need 1 more loop, our border loop. So just behind this edge here, there will be another loop that you can find to pick up. It might be slightly hidden by your join, or if you've sewed in your end, but we'll pick up another loop in the back for our border stitch. Okay, so then looking at our first row of our chart, we are going to start the return pass for row 1, and then we have this lighter colored 2 together symbol. So that one indicates that we chain 1 first and then work 2 together. And then when we get to that symbol again, it'll be reverse, the darker symbol, and the darker symbol means 2 together first and then chain 1. So to help us with that in the written pattern, it's written out the pull through, so I'm going to be saying what that says as we work together. So to start our return pass, it says pull through 1 loop and pull through 2 loops 5 times. So that's this first part here. We pull through 1 loop, our border stitch, pull through 2 loops 5 times. So yarn over, pull through 1 loop. That is the return pass for the border stitch. Pull through 2 loops 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we'll chain 1 and then pull through 3 loops. So the loop on our hook plus 2 more. And you can see how that forms. We took those 2 stitches off together, and that forms the 2 together stitch. Pull through 2 loops 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then it's the 2 together first, so we'll pull through the 3 loops, which takes those 2 stitches off together, then plus a chain 1. Pull through 2 loops 4 times. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that has taken us through to this part right here. And then you can see how we're going to repeat that same pattern 2 more times. So when you see this symbol going this direction, we do the chain 1 first, take off 2 stitches. When we see it going this way, we take off 2 stitches first and then add the chain 1. So we're at the chain 1, then we take off these 2 stitches together. Pull through 2 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we do the 2 together plus a chain 1. Pull through 2 4 times, take off 4 loops. 2, 3, and 4. Then we do the 2 together with the chain 1 first, take off the 2 loops, then 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 2 together, chain 1, and 4 more loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then take off that remaining border edge loop. And that's our first row. So sometimes if these symbols get a bit confusing to you, because you're doing 2 together but you have to pull through 3 loops, I just kind of ignore when we're pulling through that return pass loop, and I concentrate on how many loops I'm working on to fit the pattern. So I'll do a few more rows with you to help you with that part, and then you'll be able to work through the chart yourself. So we're going to start row 2. We will pick up 4 TSS stitches. We will work into that chain 1, pulling up a loop, and then we're going to put our hook under both loops of the 2 together to pick up the next loop. So I'll show you how that works. So for row 2, we will start with 4 TSS. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we have reached where we worked the 2 together. So we can see how we have this space, that extra return pass or that chain 1. Insert our hook in there to pull up a loop. And then under both vertical loops of that 2 together stitch, yarn over and pull the loop through. And then pull up a loop TSS in each of the next 6. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we've reached the next 2 together, so we work under both of the loops and pull up a loop. Into that hole or space, pull up a loop. And then TSS in 4. So we're on the second repeat now. 3 and 4. We've reached that chain 1, so in the space, pull up a loop. Under both loops of the 2 together, yarn over, pull up a loop. TSS in 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We've reached the 2 together stitch under both loops, pull up a loop. In that chain 1 space, pull up a loop. TSS in 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is the third repeat. In the space, pull up a loop. Under both loops, pull up a loop. 6 TSS, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Under both loops of the 2 together, pull up a loop. In the space, pull up a loop. TSS in 5, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the border loop. Pull up a loop. And we should have the 49 loops on our hook again. So we'll begin our return pass. Let's look at the chart for a minute. So we take off our border loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 regular return passes, and then we'll do the next 2 together. So this one, remember, starts with the chain 1 first, and then the 2 together. So if it works for you to think about how many loops you're pulling through, so you pull through 1 for the border stitch, and then you're going to pull through 2 6 times. The way I think it in my head is by the loops I'm pulling off. And we always will be pulling through our working loop except for that very first border stitch. So we always have the working loop. So I think about how many loops we're pulling off. So we want to pull the next 6 off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and that last one should be the loop we picked up in the chain 1 space, because now we're working our 2 together over 1 to get more of that diagonal line. So this time we chain 1 first, and then we want to do the 2 together. So we pull through our working loop, but we take off 2 of these loops at the same time. And then it's 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we do the 2 together, chain 1. And then we take off 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And ready for our chain 1, 2 together, and 4, 2, 3, and 4. 2 together, chain 1, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this is our last time. Chain 1, 2 together, and 4, 2, 3, and 4. 2 together, chain 1, and then take off the last loops. 5 and the border stitch. So that was row 2. So row 3 we're going to work together as well. Let's pick up 5 TSS, and then we'll work in the chain, pick up a loop, and under the 2 together, and then 4 TSS in between the next 2 together. So pick up 5 loops first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We've reached that chain 1 space, so in the loop, pick up a loop. Under both loops of the 2 together, pick up a loop, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, not 6, my fault. Under the 2 together, pull up a loop, and in the space. So that's our first repeat. Now it's 6 in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We'll reach that next space. So we'll insert, pull up a loop, and under the 2 together, pull up a loop. 4 TSS. 2, 3, and 4. Under the 2 together to pick up a loop. in the space to pick up a loop, and then it's 6 TSS, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 into the space, under the 2 together, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, into the 2 together, into the space, and then our last loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and our border stitch. Like so. Okay, now remember, if you wish on this border stitch, instead of doing the chain 1 or just pull through 1, you can yarn over and pull through 2 directly. You just have to remember that it's 2 stitches you pulled off, and you have to pick up them separately. You'll have to pick up this loop and the border stitch on your return pass. Sometimes doing that, it's a little bit easier to pick up that border stitch loop, but that's optional for you. So that says the return pass for row 3. I pulled through 2 to start, which was taking off these first 2 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 more to do before I reach the 2 together. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I can tell I'm in the right place because that last loop I took off was the loop we picked up in the space. So we're going in a diagonal this way. Chain 1, 2 together. Now this time we only have 2 return passes in between. 1 and 2. Then we do the 2 together and the chain 1, and then it's 8 that we take off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Chain 1, 2 together, and 2. 1, 2, then the 2 together, chain 1, and then 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Chain 1, 2 together, and 2, 2 together, chain 1, and then our last stitches. 3, 4, 5, 6, plus the border stitch. And then for counting, the next forward pass is the same number in between those 2 together as we did on the return pass. So you can go ahead and work the row 4 pickup loop. I'm going to meet you when we do the return pass for row 4, as the 2 togethers are back to back in that one. So I'll help you with that, and then we'll be ready to work the chart by ourselves. So go ahead with the forward pass for row 4. Okay, I'm ready for the return pass for row 4. You can see when I hold it up how we have these lace sections or open pieces coming together in the diagonal. So we'll just work our return pass now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we do our chain 1, 2 together, and then right away we'll do the 2 together, chain 1, and then we'll take off 10 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then ready for our chain 1, 2 together, 2 together, chain 1, and the 10 loops again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Chain 1, 2 together, 2 together, chain 1, and then we'll take off our remaining loops. And that's the first 4 loops, or first 4 rows that we have worked together. So hopefully that is making sense for you and you're starting to see that nice lace pattern emerge. Okay, so we've worked our way in. We'll just pick up the loops side by side as it shows there, and then we'll start gradually going apart again and back in, and always in and out like that. So there are 2 pages again for this chart, so just be careful you're following that in the right order of row numbers, pages 4 and 5. And enjoy and good luck. So I've worked a little bit over halfway through this block. Just a reminder of a couple of things, especially on the large blocks, I find it helpful to put stitch markers in. I have every 10 rows here that I have added my stitch markers just to help count, particularly if I need to set my work down so I can remember which row I'm on. The other thing I found on these shapes, particularly when we start working out this way on these diamonds, that I sometimes would miss where the chain 1 spaces were and was picking up a loop in the wrong spot. So if you find you're doing that, or again if you've had to set your work down for a while, I find it helpful to put a stitch marker in the chain 1 spaces, and then I can remember on which side of those 2 together I needed to pick up a loop in the chain space. So that's just something I found helpful as I was working. And then one last reminder, when you work the forward pass, you need to pick up 47 loops, and when we've gotten to the border stitch, we'll have 49 loops on our hook. So there'll be a total of 42 rows for this block. When we're finished it, we will work the bind off row across the top as well. So now that we're finished this block, we're going to do the vertical line along the side and across the top. So we started our block behind the 48th stitch. I've marked the 47 stitches. That's actually the first stitch of that block as the border edge. We don't count. And then we'll skip 3 loops from that 47th stitch to mark the next loop. And that's where we will join on the back side of this loop for our vertical line join. So I've joined my yarn for the vertical line, and then I'll come in front and pick up these 4 loops. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then ready for my first connection on the back of that first row of block 17. So we'll have 6 loops on our hook. Our joining loop, we pick up 4 loops in the vertical bars across, and then connecting to block 17. Then we'll yarn over and pull through 2 to finish our first row of the vertical line. So we're just going to work up the vertical line, always picking up 4 loops across. And when we've made the connection to the next row up, we can do the return pass, but we'll have those 6 loops on the hook after our connection. Okay, now I've left my stitch markers in on my block. I had added stitch markers on every 10th row, so row 10, row 20, and 30, and so on. So that way I can keep track on this vertical line that I have equal amount, that I have 10 rows meeting up with my 10th row here, and so on, so we don't skip a row. And then we'll make sure we have enough connections for the block on the next side next week. So you can go ahead and work those 42 rows of the vertical line. Do not bind off, and I will meet you at the top of block 17. So you should have 42 rows on this vertical line. As you can see, I've moved my stitch markers over on every 10th row for when we work the blocks beside it to make sure we're connecting the right spots. So now we're going to work the horizontal line across the top. So we'll just continue from the end of row 42 of the vertical line. We'll pick up the 4 loops across the vertical line. And then in the back, we will start picking up, we will ignore or skip over the border stitch there and pick up 47 loops across the top. 3, 4. So when you've picked up all your loops across the top, we'll have picked up the 4 on the vertical, 47 across the top of block 17, plus our starting loop, which should give us 52 loops, and then we need to pick up our border stitch as well. So in the back, behind the border, just under our bind off or a closing knot, in one of those back loops, pick up our border loop. And then we'll start the regular return pass all the way down. So you'll have 53 loops to take off in the return pass. And then you'll work 2 more rows of this horizontal line and bind off as well. So before we begin the next few blocks, I just want to take a moment here to prepare for where we're going to join and attach to those blocks. So starting from the far side here, at the first stitch past the border stitch, we want to count over 13, and those will be the number of loops we pick up for this next block, and we will be joining in the back of that to start. And then we will miss 3 loops in between and mark the 4th loop past that. That will be our vertical line. And then starting on the next loop, we're going to count 30 across and mark our last joining part, leaving the vertical line stitches. So you can go ahead and place those markers, and then I'll meet you here in a minute for block 18. Block 18 introduces a new stitch. So we're going to find our swatch again and work this new stitch. So you want to make sure that you have a row of TSS finished on your swatch before we begin. So I'm just going to work a quick row of TSS as a foundation row to learning this next stitch. So if you remember the knit stitch, the Tunisian knit stitch, we have this front loop and the back loop, and we insert our hook through to the back through those 2 loops to pull up our loop. So this is similar to that, but it's a twisted knit stitch in that we want this front loop to cross over or be on the opposite side than it normally is. So to do that, we use the hook part to pull that front loop over until we see the back loop and insert our hook between those 2 to pull up a loop. So we've twisted or turned those loops the opposite direction. So pull that loop over until you see the back loop and push through to the back to pick up a stitch. Okay, so you can practice working down the row. Making sure you still get between those 2 vertical loops, but pulling the front loop over. My yarn splitting a bit here, so sometimes I might need to use a thumb to help to push that over. And then when we get to the border stitch, we just insert under those 2 side loops as we normally do and work a regular return pass. Remember, you can either pull through 1 and continue to pull through 2 for the return pass, or start right away with pulling through 2 to finish the return pass. Okay, so I have found it easiest to use that little hook part of my hook to pull that front loop over to insert. If that's tricky for you, you can try to go from the opposite direction, under and through. I've just never been able to make that work very well for me, and find it easiest just to let our tool, our hook, do the work. So pull that loop over, insert between the front and the back. So you do want to make sure that you're checking each time that you're going between those front and back loops. Okay, so you can just work a few rows of this twisted knit stitch, the twisted TKS, till you get more comfortable with it. Or you can do some rows where you work 2 TSS and then a twisted knit until you feel comfortable working this twisted knit stitch. And so on. So I'll let you work as many rows of that practice swatch of the twisted TKS as you would like. Here is our row of knit stitch down here, the regular knit stitch. And as you can see that sort of almost like a cross stitch in a way, but how those loops have been twisted, giving a different effect than the basic knit stitch. So go ahead and practice that, and I'll meet you back here for block 18. So for block 18, we're going to pick up our border loop just past our marked stitch, and then starting at our marked stitch, we will pick up 13 loops across, which will give us 14 loops on our hook, and then pick up on behind $15 loops on our hook. So we're going to be making 27 rows for this with 13 loops in between our border stitches. So when we've picked up across, it'll be 15 loops across and 27 rows. So we'll do our regular return pass, and then we want to do another row of TSS and regular return pass, and I'll meet you back here for row 3. So for row 3, we're going to start with 1 simple stitch, and then these curly sort of ribbon-like marks are the twisted knit stitch, and 1 more TSS to finish the row. And we'll do that for 4 rows. So we'll work row 3 together, 1 TSS to start. And then we'll work those 12 twisted knits. So pull that front loop over until you see the back loop and go between the 2. That first one I didn't do right. So you pull that front loop over until you can go between the front and the back loop. Mine's a little bit tight there, so I need to help it out. There we go. Front loop over till you see the back loop and go in between the front and the back loop for the twisted knit stitch. So that's 2, 4, 6. Oops. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, ending the row with a TSS and the border stitch. So we'll have 15 loops on our hook and work the regular return pass. So that's our first row with those twisted knit stitches. As I said, you're going to work 3 more rows with the twisted knit and then 2 rows of TSS. So you can go ahead and work those. I'll meet you back here for row 9. So we're ready now for row 9. And as you can see, we'll start with the TSS again, the twisted knit, but in between the twisted knit, we're going to put a regular knit. So twisted, regular knit, twisted, regular, and so on down this row. So let's work that together. Simple stitch, twisted knit stitch, and then the regular knit stitch, twisted knit, knit, twisted knit, knit, twisted knit, knit, twisted knit, twisted knit, there it is, knit, and one last twisted knit stitch, TSS, and the border stitch. So 15 loops on your hook, TSS to start, and then alternate twisted and knit, ending with a twisted, a TSS, and our border, the twisted, TSS, and our border stitch. Then we can work the regular return pass, and you'll work 3 more rows of this alternating pattern, 2 rows of TSS. Row 10 then alternates. We start with a knit stitch first and the twisted knit next. So knit stitch in the twisted and then the twisted knit on the knit stitch. Then we'll end row 10 with a knit stitch, TSS, and our border stitch. Okay, so you'll just continue to alternate or repeat rows 9 and 10 until you have a total of 5 rows of this section. So after you've done this first set of alternating 5 rows where you start the one row with a twisted and then a knit stitch, the next row with a knit and then a twisted, and then the next group of that alternating rows will start with the knit stitch, twisted, and the next row the twisted, knit stitch, etc. And ending with a section of just twisted knit. So after we finish this block, we want to work a vertical line. So you'll come to our next marked stitch, join in the back loop of that marked stitch, ignoring the bind off rows. You're going to work over top or in front of them to pick up the 4 loops across. And then connect to the first row of the block in behind those side loops for 6 loops on your hook, return pass, for the first row of the vertical line. And we'll just continue to work 27 rows of the vertical line, and I'll meet you at the top of our block when we're finished that vertical line. So if you're making the small size blanket, this is your top of your blanket here. So we've just finished block 18 and the vertical line. You do not want to make this horizontal line if you are working the small blanket. So then you need to go ahead and bind off the vertical line that we just made. If you're working the medium or large size blanket, we do not bind off, but we can fasten off, and then we'll be working this horizontal line after we're done blocks 19 and 20. So small size blanket, bind off now, but medium, large, do not bind off. So for block 19, you will join in the back of this next marked stitch and then pick up 30 loops across the top and make the connection to block 18, the vertical line just beside block 18. So you'll have 32 loops on your hook. And then you can go ahead and work a regular return pass, and then I'll help you with row 2. So for this block, we're going to be using Tunisian simple stitch. We'll also use purl stitches and knit stitches to create these 2 diamond shape for our stitch pattern. So row 2, we're going to start with 5 TSS, 2 purl, 1 knit, 2 purl. Then we'll work the 9 TSS and repeat those sets of 2 purl, 1 knit, 2 purl, and finish off with TSS. So I'll help you with this row 2, and then you'll be able to work the remaining 12 rows on your own, plus binding off. So we'll do row 2 together right now. So we'll TSS the first 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2 purl stitches. 1 and 2. Then a knit stitch and 2 more purl stitches. 1 and 2. Oops. There we go. Then we'll work 9 TSS. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Then we'll work those 2 purl stitches, 1 and 2, oops, there we go, a knit stitch, and 2 more purl stitches, 1 and 2. We'll finish out the row with these TSS stitches, 4, 5, and 6, and then make our connection to the next row up on the vertical line, and ready to begin our return pass. So each row is a regular return pass, and you'll just keep following along the chart for where you need to place the purl stitches or the knit stitches. And then remembering that once you've made the connection, there's 32 loops on your hook. And if you wish to mark the 12th row up on the vertical line so you know where to stop this block, then that's a great idea to help with that as well. So go ahead and I'll meet you here at the end of this block. So block 19 will look something like this with these 2 diamond shaped patterns in our block. So make sure that you've worked your bind off row across the top, and then we're going to use or make this horizontal line. So for the horizontal line, you're going to want to join in back of our border stitch, pick up 30 loops across, make your connection to the next row up on the vertical line, and then work a regular return pass. You will have 32 loops on your hook when you've made the connection. And then after the return pass, we will just work 2 more rows of TSS plus a bind off row. So you can go ahead and finish that horizontal line. Block 20, our final block for week 5. You will join your yarn in the back of the border stitch of our horizontal line, pick up the 30 stitches across in the back, and make our connection for 32 stitches on our foundation row, or 32 loops, on our foundation row. Then we can go ahead and work the regular return pass for this first row of block 20. And then in this block, we're going to be using mostly purl stitches and our new stitch, that twisted knit stitch, and making 3 repeats for 3 columns of the same stitches. Once we get up to row 10, we are going to be working one row that has a large cable in it. So we haven't done a cable quite this large before, so I'll make sure to help you when we get to that section. Let's do row 2 together right now. So we're going to start with 4 purl stitches, 2 knit, 3 purl, and then there'll be 2 TSS stitches, and then we'll work that again, 3 purl, 2 knit, 3 purl, and so on. So starting with 4 purl stitches, and making sure we use that first loop past our border for 1, 2, 3, 4 purl stitches. Now we'll do 2 of those twisted knit stitches, 1 and 2, and 3 more purl stitches, 1, 2, and 3 purl stitches, 2 TSS, and then we're into the second set, so it's 3 purl, 2 and 3 purl stitches, and 2 of those twisted knit. One and 2, 3 more purl stitches, 1, 2, and 3 purl stitches, and then those 2 TSS again to divide before our third repeat. 3 purl stitches, 1, 2, and 3, 2 twisted knit, 1 and 2, and then we'll end with 4 purl stitches, 1, 2, 3, and 4 purl stitches will make our connection to the second row up on the vertical line and regular return pass. So I'm going to let you follow the chart through, and I will meet you at row 10, and then we'll only have 2 more rows after that for the 12 rows. So 32 loops across when we have our connection loop on our hook as well, and you'll work these next few rows up to the end of row 9, and I'll join you at row 10. Row 10, we will start with the 2 purl stitches as we did previous row, so 1 and 2 purl stitches. Now over the next 6 stitches we are going to be working that cable. So what we're going to do first is make 3 purl stitches on those first 3 twisted knit stitches, 2 and 3 purl, and then 3 of the twisted knit. Oops. 1, 2, and 3. So now we're going to take those 6 loops off the hook. So this is the forward pass cable. I will show you the return pass cable next, but for the forward pass cable we take those 3 loops off the hook. The first 3 are purl stitches, so we'll put them on our stitch holder to the back, put the twisted knit, those 3 stitches back on our hook, cross the purl stitches over, and put them back on our hook for that cable, 3 over 3. Then there'll be 1 purl stitch left in this purl before the TSS. So we'll make that purl stitch, the 2 TSS, and the next purl stitch. Okay, and then we've come to the next 6 stitches that we will use for the next cable. So it's 3 purl stitches, 1, 2, 3 purl stitches, and 3 of those twisted knit stitches. 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to be working this cable in the return pass. If you're working the forward pass cable, please take those 6 loops off your hook and work the cable now. Then it's purl in the next, 2 TSS, purl in the next. Okay, and then ready for the third cable. So 3 purls, 1, 2, and 3 purls, then 3 twisted knit. 1, 2, and 3. Ending the row with 2 purls. Now again, sorry, before we do those last 2 purls, those last 6 stitches we worked would be a forward pass cable there, taking off the 6 stitches and crossing them, and then ending the row with 2 purl. Try that once more. 1 and 2. Okay, we'll make our connection to the vertical line and work the return pass. Now I'm working 2 sets of return pass cables, so I just took off the first 2 stitches. So now I need to make my cable with these 6 stitches, so I'll be taking 7 loops off the hook, purl stitches go on the stitch holder to the back, knit stitches back on the hook, cross those purl stitches over, put them back on the hook, and the working yarn back on. Okay, so now we'll work the return pass over the cable. So we take off 1 purl stitch, 2 purl stitch, 3 purl stitch. Then both forward pass and return pass, we will pull through 1 or make a chain 1, and then we'll take the next 3 stitches of the cable off. 1, 2, and 3 twisted knit. And then we'll take off the 2 or the purl stitch, then the 2 TSS, and then the purl stitch. And now I'm ready for my next return pass cable. So taking off 7 loops, 3 purl stitches go to the back, twisted knit back on the hook, cross the purl stitches, working loop back on the hook. Then we'll take those first 3 purl stitches off and make the chain 1, and then the next 3 stitches off, or 3 loops, for the rest of the cable return pass. Take the purl, the 2 TSS, and the purl off, and then we've reached our last cable. So if you're working a return pass cable, you need to remove your 7 loops and do the cable right now. This is where I worked the forward pass cable, so I'll just continue with the return pass, pulling off each of those 3 purl stitches of the cable, adding a chain 1, and then taking off the 3 twisted knit stitches for our cable, and then pulling off the 2 purl plus the border stitch. So that is row 10, a larger cable than we've worked before, the 3/3 stitches. So now as we work row 11, we just want to be very careful as we work into the cable that we pick up the right stitches. So we'll do the 2 purl stitches on the edge, and then it's going to be the next 6 will be the twisted knit. So the first 3 are the twisted knit stitches that we pulled over, and particularly on this third one, being careful that we don't go through the purl stitches that are crossed. And then let's make sure we can find our 3 crossed purl stitches. So you might need to sort of adjust your loops a bit just to find those. And we will work the twisted knit on those. 1, 2, and the third one, 3. Okay, then the purl stitch, 2 TSS, and a purl stitch. And then we've reached the next cable. So again, the twisted knit stitches, the first 3 are fairly easy to find and work. That twisted knit, 2 and 3, except that third one, you just need to be careful that we don't get a purl stitch caught in the back. Then finding those next 3 purl stitches and working the twisted knit there as well. 1, 2, and 3. Purl stitch, TSS, and purl stitch, and ready to work our twisted knit at the final cable for this row. 1, 2, and 3 twisted knit, and then finding those 3 cables at the last, or the last part of, the 3 purl stitches at the last part of the cable, working a twisted knit in each of those. That's 2 and 3 twisted knit stitches, ending with 2 purl. Sometimes it's hard to find that purl after the cable. Mine got a little bit tight, so they're hard to find that loop. There it is. And then joining to the last row, or the second last row on the vertical line, and working our regular return pass. So once you finish the return pass, you can finish row 12 on the chart, which is the 6 twisted knit where we worked the 6 twisted knit this last row. And then you can work the bind off row as well. So one of the really nice benefits to doing this type of a project is we learn lots of different stitch combination and patterns, and then we can use them to create our own pieces later on. So this is another lovely pattern here that if you repeat this over and over, these 12 rows we did would make a great scarf with this sort of ribbing effect, or even on a cardigan or something like that. So we're going to work our vertical line across the edge of these 2 blocks that we just finished, block 19 and block 20. So we start down at the back behind our border edge of the previous vertical line. Ignoring the bind off row, we reach across and pick up our loops in each of the loops across and make our connections. So 6 loops on our hook, and ready to work our return pass. And then we will just continue this vertical line, making our pickup loops. So we're picking up 4, then plus the border and the connection loop. There'll be 6 on our hook each row. Then you want to be careful that we pick up 12 rows on this first block, 3 rows on the horizontal line and 12 more rows on this block here for a total of 27 rows of a vertical line, and I'll meet you at the top. So when you have completed your vertical line, the small size only, you want to work a bind off on those few stitches at the top of the vertical line. For the small blanket, this will be your top edge to which you'll add the border, so you'll need to bind that off. For medium and large stitches, we are going to continue across working a horizontal line all across the blocks from this week. So we will start where we finished with our vertical line, pick up these 4 loops across the vertical line. Then working across the next block, we're going to pick up 30 loops, 2, 3, and then working across this next vertical line, we will skip over that border edge and pick up the 4 loops of the vertical line. So 1, let me try that again. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then again, we're going to pick up 13 loops across the top of this last block. 1, 2. So 13 loops across the top of this last block, plus a border stitch in the back. So that should be 53 loops across the top, and then we can work our regular return pass and work 2 more rows of TSS plus a bind off row. So 3 rows, 53 loops each, and a bind off row. So when our horizontal line is completed with that bind off row, we have finished week 5. Great job, and I look forward to seeing you next time.